got about 66 participants.
Sir.
Sir.
Hello. Sir, the link I have shared in the college group. Hello.
Yeah. What are you saying?
College group is nodi sir. You check it in the college group.
Okay.
Please.
Saudra sir, should we begin? Are we ready?
Sir, please start. Please start.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Devi Dasan, and I am from Carving Talent, a learning organization which is based in New Delhi for the last about 25 odd years. Carving Talent is the lead promoter of today's program, which is an international webinar entitled Gender Sensitivity and Women Empowerment, Global and Indian Perspective in Ushering Change. And along with us, this program is being co-authored on a collaborative mode. And we have got Policy Times, who is one of the sponsors. Policy Times is a policy advocacy firm, which is based in New Delhi, that recommends policy changes, etc., to the Indian government and corporates alike. It is also an online journal platform. And along with that, the other collaborator is VIMS, Vivekananda Institute of Management Studies, which is based in Tamil Nadu. And this organization is an educational organization, it's a huge organization with about 21 odd educational institutions, colleges and schools across. They also focus on women empowerment, incidentally. And the entire contingent of VIMS students and the professors, etc., is being led by Dr. Mohanas Sundaram, who is with us today. And the other promoter is, collaborator is Oxford College of Law, which is based in Bangalore. And we have with us Dr. Mailsamy, who is a legal luminary, who has been teaching law for the last about almost 20 odd years. Oxford also, like VIMS, is again a huge organization with several colleges with thousands of students studying. And lastly, we have got Change Creator, South Africa, an organization that is specialized in ushering change. And we have with us the CEO of Change Creator South Africa, Mr. Stanley Beckett. So this is about the small background of who are all the people who are involved behind it. Now, talking of gender sensitivity and women empowerment, we have two important people who will be talking about it, but we know that this gender sensitivity and women empowerment issue is as old as the humanity itself. Ever since man was born, when I say man, includes women also, on the face of the earth, the disparity seems to be actually lingering on. Even in the 21st century of modern world, this has been there. It has been lingering on. Women somehow seems to be deprived of the opportunities. And it's not only that she's always considered as a second-class citizen of the world. Wherever she is, there's so much of gender violence, which is that she doesn't get somehow the due share she must be getting, despite the fact that she has been actually showing her mettle across the world. So to talk with on this issue, this program has been divided into two segments. The first segment would be handled by Mr. Stanley Beckett. And along with Stanley Beckett, he has also got a team of people, the people from South Africa. And so it is truly an international program. Now, before we move on to the next one, let me actually introduce the first the speaker. Stanley Beckett, as I've been telling, is a change agent, a change guru, who actually doesn't require any introduction in the sense that he is the author, the person who has formulated the famous change creator formula, which is being used across the world. Stanley always has been thinking, we have known for quite a long time. He always says that when it comes to change, how come people struggle with it? And this is precisely where Stanley has been working for the last about 20 odd years. And he has developed it by, he has got a unique blend of education. He is an IT person, he is an astrophysicist, he is a co-founder of Change Creator. Online Mind Graphic is another company which he has founded. And of late, Stanley has been actually interacting with the Nelson Mandela Foundation and Martin Luther King Foundation of South Africa. And Stanley has ambitious plan for actually propagating the non-violence and particularly about the gender violence which is happening across. So he wants to create a kind of global platform for ushering change in this aspect. We have with us a variety and number of people from Divergent Group. From corporates, we have got several people. You know, one of the corporate wind energy giant, Inox Wind, is represented by several of the people because this subject is something very dear to them. They keep conducting. We have got a carry mission. We have got a plethora of students who are sitting over here. Talking of Stanley, Stanley has written 2 books. And the famous one, the Change Creator formula, is specifically meant for bringing the positive change in the area of business. And several people use it, and he has written another book called Lift Off, which Stanley is so magnanimous in actually gifting it to people who attend. So when the session is over, I can send a copy of that to all of you. I've taken the liberty of actually saying it without actually taking permission from Stanley. This is an interesting book. So this is about it. Before I hand over the mic to Stanley, let me say a few words about the carving challenge. This is Dr. Mayaswamy, who will be actually coming in the second session and will be introduced properly by my colleague on the board, Dr. Samal Sundaram. And this is about carving talent. I'll take another 2 minutes before I hand over the mic to Stanley. You know, Carving Talent is an organization, it's a learning organization, which is built on trust and driven by commitment. This is something which is extremely important. This is not just an organization which is standing there to make money. We want to bring a positive change. We want to infuse value, knowledge, ethics, morals, and value to the humanity to make people on one side competent personalities and on the other side good people. So the organization has 3 verticals. The first vertical is education. There are so many educational experts and people with doctorate and having number of years, decades of experience. So education is one area we keep working. Second area is we are into training. We train almost all the major corporates, the giants of India, and must have trained lakhs and lakhs of people on divergent areas, whether it is technical, whether it is behavioral, etc. And the last one is we are into consulting of businesses, and especially in the field of education, how to set up colleges, faculty development, and so on and so forth. So Carving Talent has what we call a corporate punchline, and we call it a unit of value-based professionalism. It's extremely important that we impart value on one side, on the other side, professionalism also. So we believe that behind accomplishment, these are the two things which are extremely important. Carving Talent resides on the four load-bearing pillars, and these pillars are faith, tolerance, generosity, and mindfulness. So wherever we go, we propagate the fact that, look, have faith in yourself, faith in the self, faith in the others, faith in the husband, wife, the organization where you're working, faith in the humanity. That has actually brought all of us together as co-sponsors of this great, workshop. So we say that, whenever you think that faith is lost, remember faith is not lost. Tomorrow the sun will rise, the rainbows will come back, the flowers will come. So faith is something we always inculcate in a world where there seems to be so much of intolerance and tension. So the next pillar on which the edifice of Carving Talent resides is tolerance. So we propagate that, accept people with, inefficiency, people who do not have as much competency as much you are. The world is a place that is full of diversity. So have that tolerance, accept each other's view without actually having that conflict factor. And we truly believe that it is the essence of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is one family, propagated in Rig Veda. And the third pillar is generosity. We say that, be generous to people. When we say generous, we are going beyond of the material generosity which people will be giving, material gift which will be giving, etc., etc. Even that is also extremely important. The great Indian spiritual text called Bhagavad Gita says that he who has only can give. Therefore, it is important to have the faculties, the qualities like kindness, compassion, empathy, mindfulness. So we say that be generous. And the last one is mindfulness, the ability to live in the present, forgetting about what you could not achieve, or crying about the spoiled milk of the past and worrying about the future. Live in the present and work for the betterment of humanity. With this, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to invite my dear friend and the somebody is drawing on the PPT on the board. So let me actually welcome Mr. Stanley Becker. So over to you, Mr. Stanley. The whole sky belongs to you. Please.
Thank you. Can you hear me properly, Sir Devi?
Yeah, we all can hear you.
Okay, so from my side, firstly, namaskar to everybody. Really lovely to be talking to everybody over in India again. And, in India, we say, for our South African colleagues listening in India, we say namaste or namaskar. And in South Africa, we say, how's it? Okay, so to all our colleagues in South Africa, to all our colleagues in India and friends, my father taught me growing up that a stranger is just a friend you don't know yet. So I consider everybody friends, and I'm very grateful to be sharing this stage with you all today and to have been invited to share something that's very important to us here in South Africa, I think worldwide, and also to me personally. A little bit of background, as Sir Devi said, I was fortunate enough to be a part of the Indian culture for more than 6 months back in 2019. Myself and my family, we moved to New Delhi, and we got, I believe, if you want to understand a place, you need to live in the place. And we were fortunate enough to live there for 6 months with the family. We got to meet Sir Devi and some of the people on this call, and I would really call India my second home. And I'm very fortunate and very blessed to be able to be running projects such as this with people in India, and on a very important subject about how gender-based violence, about violence generally, but today we are going to focus on a specific aspect. As you would have seen in the invitation, there are many different sides to this that we could be looking at. And I decided to focus on step one, something that we can all focus on and something that we should all focus on, which is women empowerment in the workplace. So that is going to be the topic of my talk today. So Debbie, if you could perhaps just share if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see the screen, Stanley. We can
Okay,
see
thank
the
you,
screen.
thank you. So what we are going to be focusing on today is the topic on 8 ways to empower women in the workplace as a start. But I am going to make a statement up front, and I'm going to say, unless we understand change, this is my area of speciality, and this is where ourselves as Change Creator and Carving Talent have partnered up. Carving Talent being our partners in India, in understanding how change takes place and understanding how to create real change, so that we're not sitting in another seminar where all we're getting is more information, but nothing changes. That is not what our purpose is. Our purpose is to create real change in the workplace and in the world. So we are going to talk about that a little bit later. But for right now, we are going to start with the topic, the 8 ways to empower women in the workplace. We can start off by talking about a survey that was done by a company called McKinsey. And McKinsey in 2019 did a survey worldwide. And what they found is that while it is true that there are more women that are rising to the top levels within companies, they are still very much underrepresented represented at every single level. So the good news is that there is a movement towards empowering women in the workplace, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Now the question is, I remember a movie or a piece in a movie once where there was a change that needed to be made, and the person said something very important. He said, "If not now, then when? And if not me, then who?" And I want to ask everybody that question as we start talking about this. If not now, if we do not all take responsibility now, then when are we going to do so? Because it's never going to happen. Now is the only time that exists. And if not you, every person sitting in listening today has a responsibility to help create this change in the world. If not you, then who? So the fact that we are here today means that we've all in some way taken responsibility to work on this very crucial area. Now, what we need to do and understand is that organizations and their leaders must step in and must begin to eliminate the bias while supporting and empowering female employees out there. And I want to ask, I almost want to assume, don't want to assume. So, Sir Devi, can I assume that we have many leaders of organizations sitting with us here today? You're just on mute, Sir Devi.
In fact, yes, it's a mixture. There are HR personnel, and especially as I told you, I know Green have sent a bunch of women entrepreneurs, women managers, leaders, students, a variety of people that are sitting over here. The answer is yes.
So, awesome. So not only do we have present leaders, but we have future leaders that are sitting here with us. And it's everybody's responsibility, whether you're present or you're future, to really work on this important topic. So we're going to talk about some of these ideas, and hopefully you will have enough ideas to start implementing inside of your business today. But then we're also going to talk about a very important step. How do we actually ensure that this change starts to take place? So when we're talking about things we can do, we're talking anything from hiring to mentorship. There's so many ways that we can support women within our organizations. And today, as I said to you, I'm going to give you 8 ideas and 8 first steps that any organization, doesn't not matter about the size, any organization can implement to start moving towards a real change, and not just change in word and change in forums like this, but actual change on the ground where it is needed. So the very first one that we're going to talk about, and that is to accept. And this is an important word. There's two very important words in this first sentence, or this first statement. And that is that we need to accept that gender diversity is a priority in our business, and then I put extra, commit to it. So the very first step for you as a leader is to accept that this is needed. Why do I say that? Because the truth is, until you accept how important the subject is, until you accept how much it is needed in the world, you will not create the change. I am going to show you a little bit later how change takes place, but what I can tell you up front is that the first step towards commitment is what we call an acceptance and what we call a level of dissatisfaction. If you are not dissatisfied with a situation, why would you change? And I think that many times that's one of the big issues that we have, is we realize there is a problem, but we don't always realize how serious the problem is and how it affects the world around us. So in other words, we're not always as dissatisfied. We're unhappy, but we're not dissatisfied. Change requires a healthy level of dissatisfaction. We all need, as leaders, as male leaders in this world, we need to have a healthy level of dissatisfaction about the current situation. And we need to understand that, and everybody sitting here, and every male.
Very sorry, there is a request from the audience that your voice is very feeble. If you could just come closer to your mic.
Okay, can you hear me like this properly? If I speak like this?
It is better, sir. It is better. Yes.
Okay, I will speak as close to the mic as possible. Thank you for letting me know. So what I was saying is that every male, I'm speaking now to the males on this call, and we can refer to the females later on and speak to them, but every male has a mother. Every male has a woman who is important in his life. And in the same way that you would want that mother, and you might have a wife, you might have a daughter, you might have a partner, but every male will understand the importance of women in our lives. And you would want those women to be treated with respect and with dignity. Remember, every woman working in your organization is someday going to be somebody's mother, someday going to be somebody's wife, and is somebody's daughter. Can we treat each other with that same respect? So are we able to accept, first of all, that gender diversity is a priority in our organization? As a leader, if you can accept that this is a critical issue that needs to be addressed, then the rest of the organization will follow in your footsteps. It starts from the top down. In any organization, we always follow the leaders. If the leaders are disrespectful towards women, then so is the rest of the organization going to be disrespectful. So it has to come from the top down, right? So you have to, secondly, make it a priority. It can no longer be one of the things that you need to do. It needs to become a priority for you as a leader in the organization. Are you willing to put it as one of your priorities in this? And remember what I said in the beginning. If not now, then when? Now is the time that we need to create it as a priority. Now is the time that we need to focus on it. And if you do this, then this in turn will enact a sense of urgency to tackle the problem within your organizations and within others. You see, because we have this way of when something starts and people see a movement and they see the leaders which they respect not only say these things, but actually apply these things, then people will follow. And that is where the second part, if we go back, comes into this. The second part being, are you willing to commit to this? And we will talk about this later. It's one thing saying you want to create change. It's another thing being committed to change. And what does it mean to be committed to change? So again, what is number one? Principle number one, accept that gender diversity is a priority and then commit to that. So Devi, can you still hear me properly? Sorry, Sir Devi, you on mute. I just want to make sure.
No, I
everybody-
can. Stainless Swamitra, this side, I can hear you loud and clear. I don't know the
Okay,
issue.
thank you.
Uh,
Thank you. Then I will continue. All right.
Yes,
yes.
please.
So let's go to principle number 2. Principle to number 2 is establish goals for improving gender diversity in your organization. Because here's the truth. If you have not set it as a goal, it will not happen. If you are not sure how to set goals and how to make goals work for you, as Sir Devi said kindly, we will be sending to everybody who's part of this, we will be sending you a free copy of my book, Liftoff, which is all about understanding goals and all about setting the right goals for yourself and your organization. But it's very important. This cannot only be something that we talk about anymore. It needs to be something that's set as a goal, because nothing really happens until you set a goal. So what you want to do is you want to complete an analysis of your organization by asking, and this is really where you can get people involved, because when you tell people what to do, they usually won't do that. But if you ask them what you think they should do, then people get involved. So in this instance, what I would recommend is that you complete an analysis of your organization by asking them for recommendations on improvements from your employees, and then really listen to what they have to say. Those are the people on the ground who will give you the best ideas. Ask them and say, guys, we have a goal of creating gender diversity within our organization. What do you think we should do? How do you think we can implement this in the most successful way? Get your people involved. Then from the information that's collected, you can establish your business goals for improving gender diversity, and you can dive deeper into what we call the bottlenecks. Where are things not happening? Where are people being resistant? Where do we need to get people to behave in a different way? Where do we need to get people to understand and to commit and to set their own goals around that? Where are these bottlenecks? You can only do that once you establish the goals and you start measuring the progress. As we always say at Change Creator and at Carving Talents, if you cannot measure, you cannot improve. How are you measuring your improvement? So you want to understand and go deeper into where the bottlenecks might be for women leaders so that they can move up the ranks within your organization. And then thirdly, you need to be sure that you educate your company about these initiatives that you are going to be doing, and make sure your goals are implemented consistently across the board, across the organization. And when we get to the end, I'm going to share with you again, coming from over 20 years of studying change in organizations, change in people, why it is that people struggle and organizations struggle to meet their goals. And one of those reasons is because we are not making people aware of what the targets are, what the goals are, what it is we want to achieve. So again, the very first one, and I'll keep repeating it because through repetition we remember, is to accept that gender diversity is a priority and to commit to that in our organization. Step number 2 is to establish goals for improving gender diversity within our organizations. Then we go to principle number 3 and step number 3, and that is to diversify the management within your organization. So having talented women in leadership can help your business foster and grow aspirations for those that are coming into the workforce or for those looking to move up the ladder. If you are a woman starting, and I'm sure some of the women on this call will be able to agree with me, some of the females here that are in business will be able to say, if you enter a business and you do not see any females in top management, then you're going to believe that that is not possible for you, and that you're going to believe that you cannot move up the ladder, and that starts becoming the culture for the organization. Now is the time for us as leaders to start diversifying our management and start including more women in leadership positions within our organization. Encourage women also within the organization to pursue opportunities at every level. I would say why I love also working with India is because it is so much the same as in South Africa. where for many years and for decades, women have not been empowered. And even to this day, many women in organizations do not believe that it's possible for them to move up the corporate ladder. We need to encourage the women within our organization to pursue and to look for the opportunities that we need to make available, right? But we can only do this if we start committing and setting the goals to diversify the management within our organizations. By promoting women that at the same rate as we promote men, you show them that they and their skills are valuable assets to your organization. I said it previously, and I repeat it again because I really wanted to make an impression upon you, is that saying something is not the same as doing something. There is a saying which goes, well done is always better than well said. We can say all the things we want to, but we are going to ultimately be measured by our results. If myself as an outside consultant had to come into any of your organizations right now, what would the percentage, what would the diversity in terms of your management be when it came to men and women? Is it something you are currently proud of, or is it something that you are committing to and accepting needs to change in your organization? So again, at number one, accept that gender diversity is a priority. At number two, establish the goals for improving gender diversity. And at number three, start implementing diversity management within the organization. Then we go to number four. Number four is very important as well. Remember to champion success within your organization. So what do we mean by that? What we mean by that is, instead of just communicating action items or criticizing people, many times when I was in New Delhi in 2019, and I went with Sir Devi around to some organizations to talk about the importance of leadership in the world. And we all know what happened since last year with COVID. The world is changing. The world is changing at a faster rate than it has ever changed before. And we are scrambling. We are running around as organizations attempting to find out, how do we adjust to these changes? And the truth is that we need to change along with the changes. And one of these has to do with this critical topic we're talking about today. And what we realize is that a leader is someone that does not just communicate what needs to be done. I'll go even further. Some leaders think that leaders are people who communicate and are always walking around criticizing everybody, telling everybody what they're doing wrong. That is not a true leader. A true leader knows that when criticism is needed, they know how to do it in the right way. But secondly, they also give praise when praise is warranted. So with a woman in our organization, do not just criticize, but also praise your female team members when it is deserved. And you will find out. I was working for an organization, a very big organization in South Africa, attempting to find out why the workers were not producing to the level that was needed. After we sat down, after many months working with these people, finding out what it was they wanted most, can anybody guess what was at number one? And these were people who did not have a lot of money. These were people that were struggling financially with their families. I thought that number one would be an increase in pay. But actually at number one, consistently through all the people we spoke to, they just wanted praise for the job they were doing. If we can understand how important that point is, we can become not just a good leader in our organization, we can become a great leader. And in the same way, when it comes to the women in our organization, because today we are focusing on women, but to all people in our organization, remember to give praise when it is warranted and to champion success. Also celebrate the strengths and accomplishments of the women in your organization. The more we see this, the more people are aware of these things, the more the women will start standing up and believing in themselves. So when someone in your organization And remember again, today we are specifically focusing on female empowerment in our organization. When a female in our organization does something well, make sure that it's acknowledged, make sure that people know about it, so that that can encourage more and more people to want to do the same and to see that it is possible to get the praise and recognition for that. When you hear a great idea from a female colleague, call it out and let people know. So again, number one, accept that gender diversity is a priority. Number two, establish goals for improving gender diversity in your organization. Number three, diversify your management. Number four, champion the success within your organization. And then number five, support professional development. Very important. Start developing professionally the females within your organization. Work to create opportunities for professional development for women in your organization. Are you creating enough opportunities? If not, like we said in the beginning, now is the opportunity for you to set those goals. Now is the opportunity for you to commit to it. And what you can also add to the opportunities is two very important things. The first one being mentorship. So when someone new joins the team, or even if you see one of the females in your team struggling to fit in, reach out and be there for them. Firstly, you as a leader, that's the most important. You as a leader, be there for them. Be the example. If you go back in history and you look at the leaders that are the most, how can I say, rated the best leaders of all time, rated the leaders people speak the most highly of, it is the leaders that are always on the floor talking to their people, knowing their people, mentoring their people, supporting their people. Decide today to be that leader in this very important movement towards female empowerment in the workshop. Mentor those that maybe need the mentorship. And secondly, create a sponsorship for them as well, for women's, sponsors or people in a position of authority. It doesn't, if you maybe as a leader are very busy, get other people in your management team, leaders of position, to be sponsors, to help these women to understand what are the opportunities for growth in your organization. So people in positions of authority who use their influence intentionally to help others advance. That's what you want to develop. You want to develop a culture within your organization where it's not, we need to almost get rid of this idea of a hierarchical business structure. A business structure, yes, you do need people who ultimately need to make the decisions, but we need to start making ourselves so important that I do not speak to anybody. We need to start as leaders being the sponsors and the mentors to these women. And if we do that properly, we will see a very big growth in terms of women empowerment within our organizations. Then we go to number 6. Number 6 is offer a very important one in today's world that men don't often consider. Offer a flexible work environment. Why is that important? Because flexibility in an organization allows employees to find a balance between their work and their home life, especially when it comes to the females in our organization who are mothers, who are wives, who have to look after their husbands. And in all of this activity that they need to do, somehow they need to balance working along with their home life. And I saw this when I didn't have obviously a big insight into the whole of India, but in companies where I was working in, I could see how the leaders of those organizations did not even consider this. They wouldn't consider that a mother has to be home at a certain time to look after her children, especially with younger children. So what does a mother do who needs the income, but she also needs to look after her family? Is there a way that we can offer flexibility to these type of people in these situations? Because women play multiple roles, from mothers to caregivers to breadwinners. And what you can do in your organization is create an initiative like flexible working hours. We have that a lot now. And I think that COVID has made us realize that it's possible. It's possible for us to have flexible working hours. It's possible to say to someone, as long as you work the certain hours we need you to in the day, we will allow you the flexibility of working from home, working from the office, leaving at certain times that are more convenient. Because I've seen that traffic in India. And I know that if you leave at a certain time from the office, it can take you hours before you get to your home, and that your home could be just around the corner. You know, do we take these things into consideration? Do we really empathize with the people that are working in our organizations? And can we create flexible working options for women with much needed balance as they also need to navigate these multiple roles, both in the workplace and at home? So let's go over it again. Number one, accept that gender diversity is a priority and commit to it. Number two, establish goals for improving gender diversity. Number three, diversify your management in your organization. Number four, champion the successes in the same way you always point out the failures. Number five, support professional development for females within your organization. And number six, offer a flexible work environment. Then we can look at the last two, also very important, each one of these important. And second last, we've got closing the pay gap within our organizations. As a leader, really look for inconsistencies between pay rates and make sure that all employees with equal experience and in a similar role are paid the same as their counterparts, whether male or female. I will say, us as males around the world, we have a long way to go towards this. We expect women to do the same amount of work for less money. You see, women are often seen as the caregivers, and the gap in pay becomes even more noticeable if a woman becomes a mother. Many times, and I'm not sure how bad it is within India, but worldwide and in South Africa, we more and more the divorce rate is going up. And what happens when the divorce rate goes up? The male leaves and the female is left looking after the children. So more and more, the females, their pay gap becomes even more skewed because they are the breadwinners. They're the ones looking after the children. Do we take this into consideration? There was a paper I read recently, which was called Children and Gender Inequality, Evidence from Around the World. And what this paper found was that women and men are on relatively equal footing until the birth of their first child, when pay for women falls immediately after childbirth, but men's never change. And they found that organizations, when a woman starts becoming a mother and has to look after the children and can't spend as much time, then they drop their the pay for the women, but not for the men. Why is it that we have double standards when it comes to the workplace? You see, the two rates do not converge again in what many call around the world a new term, which is called a child penalty. So in other words, we're actually penalizing women for becoming mothers. Are we aware of this? And is this happening within our own organization? And then finally, the last thing that we can do, that we can all do within our organization, is to accept individuality. So what we mean by accepting individuality is that every person is different, right? It may be obvious that not all women are the same, but there's still gender bias regarding how women should and should not act. So we've still got inside our heads this idea of how a woman should act and how a woman shouldn't act, and without realizing that every person is different. Can we accept the individuality of every female within our organization in the same way that we accept individuality of the males within our organization? Let your employees know that you value their different qualities and embrace that every woman has her own story to tell. There's many different ways we can do this. And if you speak to Sir Devi and Carving Talent, they also have a way of understanding the different brain profiles of your employees. And when you understand that, you'll understand that people think differently. People behave differently. And if we can learn to accept the individuality, we can really create a space where people feel safe enough to be able to cross this bridge of women empowerment within our organizations. There's certainly much more work to done, but it's up to you to do your part as a leader. And I'm talking about current leaders as well as future leaders. It's your part, not the person next to you, not the next organization. You sitting, listening today, it's your responsibility. If not you, then who? If not now, then when? It's your responsibility to do your part as a leader to help even the playing field so that women can feel heard, included, valued, supported, and empowered. And this is my vision when it comes to gender-based violence, when it comes to women in the workplace, is that we as the males who need to take responsibility for this, as the leaders of organization who need to take responsibility for this, that we allow the women in our organization to feel heard, to feel included, to feel valued, to feel supported, and to feel empowered, not just in word, but in deed. So let us go over the 8 steps one more time. Number 1, accept that gender diversity is a priority and then commit to it. Number 2, establish goals for improving your gender diversity. Set those goals. Number 3, create diversity in the management. If you do not have enough women in positions of management, start creating the goal to empower women into those roles. Number 4, champion the success in the same way that you always point out criticism. Number 5, support professional development, not only a pathway for the females within your organization towards professional development, but also supporting them through mentorship and sponsorship. Number 6, offer a flexible work environment for the females within your organizations, especially those who are mothers. Number 7, close the pay gap and be aware of what happens when a woman becomes a mother. Are we guilty as an organization of creating what they call the child penalty on mothers? And number 8, accept the individuality of each person that works within our organization. Now, I'm hoping that those are all things that have made us all think, especially us as leaders and men in this talk today, and that there are points that we all know we can start, all of us, working on. But here's a problem that I have from a change point of view. So now I'm going to talk to you as an expert on change, as the change guru, and how change takes place individually and in organizations. And the first thing what we need to understand is what I've given you today. What we've done in this session is we've given you some knowledge. But knowledge on its own does not change anything. And my concern, because I see the same thing happening here in South Africa as in India, as around the world, is there is a lot of focus on ending violence. There's a lot of focus on ending gender-based violence. There's a lot of focus on ending violence towards women and children. But if all we're doing is giving people knowledge, in other words, we're telling people what the stats are, we're giving people some ideas on how they can change. If all we ever do is create knowledge, then nothing will ever change. And we will be wasting our time and wasting our energy. So how do we create a situation where this is actually effective and change is really starting to take place? You see, because within Change Creator, we have a concept that we call the knowing-doing gap. And this gap just gets bigger and bigger for people as we grow older. And it's the gap between what we know and what we actually do. So let's take an example. One of the biggest things worldwide is big problems is that as a generation, we have never been as unhealthy as we are today as a generation, right? Sorry, I just hear a lot of background noise. I don't know if moderator can maybe just mute everybody. Okay, I will continue. So on the knowing-doing gap, everybody knows worldwide that our health is becoming a problem. Just look at the children. And whether it's in India, whether it's in South Africa, whether it's in America, whether it's in the UK, I don't know if you've noticed, but more and more children are fatter and fatter from a young age already. They're overweight, they're unhealthy, their parents are unhealthy, and it's causing heart diseases, it's causing diabetes, it's causing all kinds of problems. If you look, for example, at the start of the 19th century, there was almost no such thing as heart problems, heart diseases. Today, it's the leading cause of death around the world. What has changed? What has changed in that 100 years is our diets. So the problem is not that we don't know what to do. We do know what to do. We know how to eat better. We know we should be exercising. We know we should be sleeping. We know we should be doing all of the things. One thing we loved and that we learned when we were in India was how to do proper yoga, how to do proper meditation. We know these things, but many people are just not doing it. So it's not that people need more knowledge. They need to understand, why am I not doing what I know I should be doing, right? I would say the problem around the world and the problem with gender-based violence and violence towards women is not that people don't know what to do to fix it, right? It's that they're not doing what they know they should be doing. Is that something in you? And ask yourself, what in my life, each one sitting here, ask yourself, what in my life do I know I can be doing better? I can go to any organization, any of the leaders sitting here today. I can walk into your organization and I can ask everybody in your organization, every employee, to write down 5 things that they know if they started doing or they stopped doing would improve their performance. And I guarantee you, every person in your organization would be able to write down at least 5 things. So it's not that people don't know what to do to improve. It's that they're not doing. So that is why knowledge on its own is not going to change anything. You see, if we understand how change takes place, then we will understand that before knowledge, there first needs to be an awareness of the problem, an awareness of your responsibility in that problem. And that is what I call being ready for change. You see, I would go as far as to say many organizations and many people even on this call are aware that there is a problem. But are you aware of your role in that problem? Are you aware of what you are doing to contribute towards that problem? Because if you are not aware, you will not change. You will not be interested in the knowledge, and you will not apply the knowledge. You see, only once we are aware should we then do the second step. And the second step is to build the desire for change. In an organization and working with organizations to deal with change through many years, I'll tell you what the big challenge is for organizations, is that they decide to create a change in the organization. Then they send an email on Monday to say we're having a meeting on Tuesday because we're creating a change starting on Wednesday. And all they're doing is they're creating a knowledge about the change, but they have not created the awareness of why the change is needed. And they haven't created the desire for the change to be implemented. And then they give the knowledge, and then the leader pays a lot of money to have consultants come in and do training and give all the knowledge needed, but nothing changes in the organization. And then they go and waste all their money and they go, oh, just another initiative that has failed. We do not want gender-based violence and the fight against violence and the fight against the bad woman empowerment around the world to just be another failed attempt. We want to make a difference, but in order to do that, we first need to create an awareness within our organization, then a desire within our organization to change, and then bring in the knowledge. And only once we've brought in the knowledge, then we can work on increasing the ability for everybody to do it. And we do this through reinforcement. But if you are missing any one of these steps, then you are going to struggle to create change within your organization. So this is where we come in, and this is where also we have partnered with Carving Talent. And I'm going to strongly encourage any of the leaders listening here today, if you are serious about this issue, if you really are committed to making a difference, speak to the organizers of this, Sir Devi and his team from Carving Talent. We will work together by helping you to understand how to create real change. We will show you the change creator formula and help you to understand how this formula is what you need to understand and apply to create real change in any initiative. Because the truth is that change will only happen when your commitment to change is greater than your resistance to change. Right? So I'll say that again. Change will only happen, and whether that's change in your organization, whether that's change in your country, whether that's change on a personal level, change will only start to happen when your commitment to change is greater than your resistance to change. So I don't have time to go through it in detail, but what I will just mention, just briefly, that you can see in front of you, is how this works. On the left-hand side, you've got all the variables that make up commitment to change, and all of them are needed if you're going to be committed to change. And on the right-hand side, all the variables that make up resistance to change. And the left-hand side has to be greater than the right-hand side. So just going through it, as I said to you early on, the first thing you need is a level of dissatisfaction. You need to be dissatisfied about this issue if it's going to change. If it's just another thing you're talking about, but you're not dissatisfied, it won't change for you and it won't change for your organization. Then you need to set the right goal, as we said, to change. Once you've set the goal, you need to believe that it's possible to achieve that goal. You and your staff, if they do not believe that it's possible, they won't commit to it. That is where you as a leader come in. You as a leader need to create that belief. Then you need to create a level of willingness, a willingness to participate. In other words, we're starting to talk about creating that level of desire, and we turn it from a desire to a burning desire. Only once that has been done do we include the right action plan. And all of this will be dependent on the level of power. How do you empower your employees? How do you empower yourself? Where does this power come from? How do we increase it? And all of those things are needed to be understood to create a commitment level that is strong enough to overcome something as big as what we're talking about today. But be aware on the other side as well. What are the variables that make up resistance? And just briefly, the first one is going to be your thinking. If your thinking is positive, then you will be less resistant. If your thinking is negative, you will be more resistant. How do we increase the level of thinking for our employees? Secondly, feeling. How do we feel about this? Once again, if we feel negative, your resistance will be greater. If we feel positive and inspired and that we can do this, the resistance will be less. Then the third one has to do with your programming experiences. That has to do with the culture of the organization. What have they experienced in the past? How have they been programmed? What were they taught growing up? And how do we go and change this programming within people? And then finally, our environment. Does our environment support our initiative? Are we as leaders able to create an environment that supports the initiative, very important initiative we're talking about today? And how do we go about changing the people in our environment? And when we can get this balance right, then change doesn't even have to be worked on anymore. Change happens naturally. So again, I'm very grateful today to have been invited to be a part of this. Sir Devi and the Carving Talent team know they can call on me anytime because of my love for India, my love for the Indian people, and just my desire to make a real difference to what's happening on that side as well. Please feel free to read the book we will give out to you, and please feel free to reach out for us if you would like to know more about this, and if there's any way that we can support you in this very important movement towards empowering women within the workplace. And from that, with that, it's over again to you, Sir Devi. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. And if there are any questions, then I'll be happy to answer them now.
Fantastic presentation as usual. I'm again inspired, and I wish we had lots and lots of time so that we could understand the change, create a formula, but that you have given a sneak peek view. Any organization who are sitting over here can definitely get back to us so that you can, with your expertise, we can actually have some other training specific to the organization and explain to them. And you can actually help the people to change. Coming back to the points which you have explained, I must say they are very, very good. Gender diversity, make it a priority and commitment. This is something the organization has to do it. And your famous talking, you cannot improve that, cannot be measured. So first of all, you should be able to actually measure it. and then how to set a goal for and then gender sensitivity. Diversity management is something which is covered in great detail and is focused specifically on Indian women. And I would say that support for professional development is extremely important, and work-life balance. This is an interesting and very important thing. Always women are feeling well when they come back after hard day's work. They have to take out the husbands, and somehow we should be saying this, but the male chauvinistic view, the world seems to be having this needs to go away. And pay gap is something which we know that it's a big international issue, despite the fact that women have actually accomplished some of the greatest heights. Still, there are problems when it comes to equality and equality when it comes to paying their salaries. And of course, accepting their individuality. This is the new point, I think it is an extremely important thing. Always we consider, men, when I say men, we should be doing it, they are less, I don't know, inverted commas, individual in that sense, something inferior in the sense. So with that, we have come to an end, and this is the time. Maybe we can take one or two questions if anybody has the questions. Audience, I don't see anything. Any questions? Okay, if there is any questions, you can actually send it, pass it on to the chat. And with that, Mr. Stanley, I must thank you, and we are immensely indebted to you for actually accepting this and then coming to do this free session, something which is truly worthy. And I must tell the viewers in the participant that Mr. Stanley has been with me, and we were together as colleagues, and that is where I have come to know his competency on professional side and as a fine gentleman, human being. And we traveled across several of the universities and colleges, hosted him, including All India Management Association, where the young entrepreneurs got him, and he spoke. And Stanley is much needed consultant in various business forums, and corporates have him on their consultant list. And also he can be regularly heard on the South African radio, if I'm not mistaken, Stanley. With that, let me once again say a big thank you. And let's move on to the second part of the program. Thank you, Stanley. And now,
thank you, Sir Devi.
Yeah, thank you. Now I would, request the.
Hold on, Devi sir.
Anji.
There is a question for Stanley, if you can take it. Hello, Stanley.
Hello, yes.
Yeah, there is a question posted for you. This is from Priyanka. She's saying, I want you to give some idea about sociology of gender.
All right, I did see the question, and to be truthful with you, sir, it's a long answer. It's not going to be a short one. So if she's willing to give me her email address, I will send her some information on that. But I do not want to take from our second speaker's time now, and it will take at least 10 minutes just to give even a beginning of an explanation of that. So could we agree that anybody interested in that question can let us know, and we can send it to them via email and answer to the question?
There is a second question, if you can take that actually. I think that may be a shorter one. Yeah, there's a second question from Chandni Mehta, ma'am. She's saying building an inclusive workplace comes before diversity of hiring. How do you do that?
So what is the question? How do you hire diverse?
Yeah, Madhav, it should start from, I think what she's saying, it should start from the hiring itself. The process should begin.
Look, absolutely, and I will agree 100% with that. Is that it starts definitely from the hiring process. If your culture, and it comes, you know what, it starts, I'm going to say it starts before that. It starts by the culture. If the culture in your organization is not one of hiring according to this diversifying process we spoke about today, then you first need to change the culture. But it's going to come down again. How do you change the culture? You need to understand that it's more than just the knowledge given today. And that's why I said, sir, that I really will encourage people, and I love the questions, even around the sociology of gender, because it shows to me that people want to understand these concepts, and they want to not just understand them, but they want them to make a real difference. I would once again recommend highly, due to time, that these kind of questions get forwarded to Carving Talent, and that we deal with it in another session where we can spend the right amount of time to talk about it. But in short, it does start by changing the culture within the organization, which then leads to changing the hiring culture within the organization. But a very good place to start. I hope that will suffice for now with the time that we have available.
Thanks a lot.
Just take a minute. I will connect Ms. Chandni Mehta to you. I mean, she is incidentally one of the HR person of a great company called if I'm not mistaken, 107 program. And for them, gender diversity.
Devi sir. Look, your voice is cracking. If you can use a headphone, that will be better.
Yeah, I can hardly hear anything. So, Sir Devi, if you could just repeat that. By the way, I do have that email address. Thank you, ma'am. I will get in contact with you and I will give you some answers. We can engage further. But Sir Devi, over to you.
This is all I wanted to say. I hope now I am audible.
No, it's still cracking, sir.
Acha, do one thing, Soumitra sir, can you actually invite Dr. Mohan Sundaram, because my voice is cracking. And
yes, so now actually the stage is here, Dr. Mohan Sundaram. I think.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good evening to all join here. First, I thank Devidasan, Professor G. Devidasan sir from Carving Talent, and Dr. Mailsami sir from Oxford College. Myself, Dr. Mohan Sundaram, so Director of WIMS. The women empowerment, there is no tool for development more effective than the empowerment of women. It's given by Kofi Annan. So women empowerment is the empowerment of women, which helps them to take their own decision by breaking all personal limitation of the society and family. Better. Next, I introduce myself with the help of our departments, our institutions. So, where the education institutions was established by Angammal Education Trust in the year 1987 by our Vidyaratna Professor Dr. M. Karunanidhi, formed the trust with the objective to impart quality education to rural women students spanning across 250 acres. Vivekananda Education Institution provide technical and professional education in the area of engineering, management, medicine, pharmacy, dental, nursing, arts, and science. So more than 23,000 women students from rural area as well as urban area pursue their education at all levels in all disciplines under one roof. As a part of Asia's largest women education institution, WIMS, Vivekananda Institute of Information Management Studies, established in the year 2002, approved by AICTE, permanently affiliated to Anna University, Chennai, NAC A grade, offering MBA MCA program, exclusively for women's studies. The primary objective of WIMS Business School is to offer quality management education to women students as per global standards. Next, gender sensitivity is a process by which people are made aware of how gender plays a role in life through their treatment of others. So sensitivity has been developed as a way to reduce barriers to personal and economic development. So gender sensitivity helps to generate respect for the individuals. It is not about beating a woman against men. So women are embodiment of sacrifice, silent suffering, humility, faith, and knowledge. So gender equality emanates out of the advancement of human rights and is a fundamental aspect of democratic citizens. Mr. Stanley Beckett shared his spectacular view, and I assure that everyone is clear enough here. I'm going to tell about the traditional point of view, what they have their gender characteristics. Women are expected to take care of the family, domestic duties, and remain close to home. It's changed. All men are expected to work and earn money for the family. It's also changed. Boys are better in mathematics than girls it's also changed. Every year, the women students are getting the first marks in their results. Boys never cry. Girls are very emotional. It's also changed. Women usually do more housework than men. Since the 80s, sexual harassment at the workplace has remained a main issue in India. The first time in India, history of the Indian court 1997, the Supreme Court of India recognized sexual harassment at workplace as a violation of human rights, but also a personal injury to the affected woman. Next, I tell you about their ethics, what they followed. In today's world, where globalization changed the definition of the method of work, it has surely reconsidered the role of women in all sectors of life. The position and status of women has immensely changed since ages. Women across the world have tasted all flavors of challenges in India. But if on one side of the coin, we see the high rise of women, then other side shows the struggle and wrong acts suffered by them. We have many rules and regulation in favor of the women empowerment, as proved to the court. Every year, we are celebrating the International Women's Day on March 8th. This year also, the UN announced that International Women's Day is 2021 is Women in Leadership Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. This theme celebrates the tremendous effort by women and girls around the world is shaping a more equal future. So we are going to wish and thank them on the same day by bottom of earth for all things you do. The fight to change the mindset of happen every day and not be a show of tokenism one day in the year. Every day should be a Women's Day for putting an end to any sort of discrimination and achieving gender-based equality and women emancipation. It is an absolute need for change in the mindset of the people, especially men. Next, I request Dr. Mailsamy. I think there is a Professor Mailsamy is a professor of law and principal of the Oxford College of Law, Bangalore. He has an elegant experience of 14 years in teaching field, in 2 years in administrative field. He also presented more than 10 papers in national and international conferences and published many papers in research. As a keen researcher, he has delivered a special lecture, organized national seminar, and participated in many national and international seminars. His interested area in teaching include company law, Indian constitution law, Indian penal code, etc. His other interests include reading, listening music, and involving in the legal research activities. I request Dr. Mailsamy, the principal of the Oxford College of Law, I think expert on Vishaka guidelines by the Supreme Court of India and sexual harassment of women at workplace, Act 2013. I hand over the session to Dr. Mailsamy. He is going to tell about what is the present law, what is the trend happening in the India, how to overcome these obstacles. Thank you, sir. I'm going to hand over the session to Dr. Mailsamy, sir. Over to you, sir. Mailsamy, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for introduction about my small performances in the academic as well as administrative area. Good evening to all participants of the webinar. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Management, Oxford College of Law, Mr. Devidasan, the Director, Carving Talent Consultancy, New Delhi, Policy Times team, then WIMS, Vivekananda Institute of Information and Management Studies, then the change creator, South Africa, Mr. Stanley, for jointly organizing the international webinar on gender sensitivity and women empowerment. It's a wonderful topic what you have chosen, and the organizers also, if you take the nature of organizers, join together to conduct the program. Legal fraternities are there, sociologists are there, voluntary organizations are there, international speakers are there. I'm very happy to share some of my thoughts relating to the topic allotted to me. The topic for today's webinar is gender sensitivity and women empowerment. If you see the topic, there are two components. One will be the gender sensitivity, creating awareness for gender justice, gender equality, and women empowerment, where we have to create the awareness, which area is lagging behind, where is the gap, which women have to be empowered. All these questions would have been arised. So to answer this particular question, gender sensitivity, particularly the awareness should be created among the people who do not have the awareness. If we take, for example, in working women area, there are two areas. One is organizing sector, another one is unorganized sector. In organized sector, the women are empowered. They have the awareness about all their rules, regulations, and bylaws, notifications, how they have to work in case of any sexual assaults or something happens, where they have to go, where they have to file the complaint. They will be known about that. But if you take people who are working in unorganized sector, particularly informal areas, where women are illiterate, they do not know what is the rules relating to work. They'll come, they'll simply do work and they'll go, and they'll be harassed by their employers, contractors, etc. So the topic chosen by our Devidasan sir, along with all organizations, is a very good topic. We have to create sensitivity, we have to create awareness, and we have to empower the women. Now we have to empower the women in all the sectors. That is what my wish. And let me come to the topic which I have allotted to me to speak. The topic which I have allotted to me for sharing some knowledge is Vishaka guidelines promulgated by the Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court of India, and the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013. If you see the topic which has been allotted to me, also having two components. One is the judicial contribution for prevention, prohibition and redressal of sexual harassment of women at their workplaces, and the contribution of the legislature, the government, after 1997 enactment, 1997 Vishaka guidelines, the government of India in the year 2013 passed a law for prohibition, for prevention, prohibition and redressal of Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act 2013. You see the gap between the judgment has come into force 1997 and the enactment passed by the Parliament, almost more than 15 years. So Parliament of India have taken more than 15 years to pass a law which is very much required to be passed for ensuring gender equality, gender justice, and relating to women empowerment also. So much of delay need not to be. When the Supreme Court passed a historical judgment in the year 1997 and directed the government of India to pass a legislation to fill the lacuna in the legal area for empowering women, but the parliamentarians have taken longer time for passing the act. Anyhow, they have filled the gap now, the act is in the force. And it's an immense contribution made by Supreme Court of India. In the year 1997, in Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan case, have been filed in the Supreme Court as a public interest litigation. For the first time, Supreme Court of India, Honorable Supreme Court, have admitted the case relating to sexual assault, sexual harassment at the workplace, and deeply inquired into it. And the judges who have passed the judgment, in this case, Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan case, had incorporated the provisions of CIDA, that is a convention, international convention, that is Convention on Elimination of All Sorts of Injustices Against Women. That is a very immense contribution made by Honorable Supreme Court. After that, Supreme Court has framed guidelines, and those guidelines are called as Vishaka guidelines, which is historical guidelines that has to be notified in each employment, irrespective of the nature of employment or irrespective of the nature of employment, that is informal sector or formal sector, government sector, private sector, everywhere it has to be notified. The Vishaka guidelines framed by Supreme Court of India imposed an obligation upon the employers to notify the guidelines and to take appropriate steps to redress the problems which have been occurred in their respective employments, that's relating to sexual harassments taken place in those employments. Now, the problem of sexual harassment at workplace is not a domestic issue. It is an international issue. It's a global issue. And it's not confined to one particular country. And also, it violates the gender equality guaranteed under Article 14 of the Constitution. And also it violates Article 21 of the Constitution, which guaranteed right to life and right to live with human dignity. And before these Vishaka guidelines come into force, in the year 1997, there was no law to deal with sexual harassment of women at workplace areas. There is set of provisions in Indian Penal Code which would deal with the offense of sexual harassment of women at workplaces. That was also not very effective. There was minimum penalty and imprisonment have been imposed for those offenses. But it's after the guidelines, Vishaka guidelines framed by Honorable Supreme Court in Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan case, Supreme Court has made a mandatory obligation to all the employees of their nature of employment, including Supreme Court premises. Wherever the women is working, this particular guidelines should be notified and it should be published. And there is a history behind these Vishaka guidelines, how these Vishaka guidelines have come into force. There is a very important history behind this. How this Vishaka case has come into Supreme Court of India. It is because of one lady, namely Banwari Devi, who has come from a lower caste community, a social worker, fought against the child marriage practice was happened in Gujar community, that is a higher caste community in Rajasthan. when she was fighting against child marriage prevention, prohibition of child marriage, the Gujar community people, they couldn't tolerate her intervention in prevention of child marriage. And one day, the stalwarts of Gujar community gang raped her and thrown her body on the roadside. Even after this incident, Banwari Devi did not leave the matter there only. She associated all the women organizations in the country and named that organizations as Vishaka, filed a public interest litigation in Honorable Supreme Court for the purpose of ensuring gender equality and right to life with human dignity guaranteed under the Constitution of India. So for the Supreme Court also, Supreme Court is the guarantor, safeguardian of fundamental rights guaranteed under the Constitution. Obviously, they have to ensure the fundamental rights of the people, and they have admitted the public interest litigation, and afterwards the famous historical Vishaka guidelines have come into force in the year 1997 judgment out of the Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan case. Here also, because of a women fighter, the guidelines have come into force, and now we have Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act, that is Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal of Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act 2013. The act has come into force. And the right part of the act includes the definition for the term sexual harassment and imposed many obligations on the employers to prevent and prohibit and redressal of sexual harassment of women at their workplaces, based upon the Vishaka guidelines framed by Honorable Supreme Court of India. And there are, if you could see the provisions of Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act 2013, you could see there are international perspectives also included in the act, particularly the gender equality, ensuring gender equality, right to life with human dignity. It's a basic human right of every human being, where wherever women is working, their right to life with human dignity, right to live with human dignity, or right to work with human dignity should not get disturbed. The CEDAW Convention has contributed more to fill the gap in the legal system in India. Many provisions have been incorporated into the said act. Certain definition parts I need to discuss with you with sharing of some of the slides. With the permission of the organizations, I would like to share the slides for your reference.
मेरे क्लास में एक मदर है.
Here there is a question. What amounts to sexual harassment? What do you mean by sexual harassment? There was no law in India to define the terminology sexual but it was the convention, CEDAW Convention, have defined the terminology sexual harassment for the first time. According to the convention, the term sexual harassment includes such unwelcome sexually determined behavior, whether directly or by implication, as physical contact and advances, a demand or request for sexual favors, sexually colored remarks, showing pornography, any other unwelcome physical, verbal or non-verbal act of sexual nature.
तो भाई किसी फाइव में है शायद इसका भाई।
What do you mean by sexual harassment?
यहाँ कुछ क्वेश्चन मार्क्स होते हैं, मुझे वो मुझसे क्लियर करता है। तो अच्छी बात है ना, मतलब ये is learning the thing और उसे बहुत कुछ
Sir, you're muted.
Please mute your mic. The lady is speaking.
So please unmute yourself.
Dr. Mailsami, please continue.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah.
So, what amounts to sexual harassment? It is an act or a gesture.
मैंने तो मम्मी से पूछा भी था, मैंने मैम एक्चुअली वो मेरी मम्मी कुछ भी नहीं है।
Aims at
भाई अपने भैया को सुनता है।
tendency to outrage the modesty of a female employee constitutes sexual harassment. How do we take a meaning of the term sexual harassment?
वो नहीं है, वो है, साई है, कृष्णा है,
Whether directly or by implication,
हाँ, तीन चार बच्चे हैं जो
I don't know who this lady is. आप भैया भाभी की बात कर रहे हैं. Can you please mute your mic, lady?
answer my question. पर मैं देती हूँ answer.
Samitra sir, if you can identify the person who is speaking, can you remove her?
मैं तेरे को होमवर्क दिया है ना मैंने,
Sure, sir.
तू होमवर्क पे काम करना शुरू कर, जितना कौशिक को बता दूंगी काम भी करती।
Devidasan sir, what is the disturbance?
Yeah, it has been mute.
हमेशा तैयार।
You mute all the participants, sir. When they have a question time, let them ask the questions, we will answer.
Yeah, your PPT is, by the way, not visible. It is okay. You please go ahead. Your screen only is seen. File folder.
कौन से कंपटीशन जो सेल्फ कंपोज वाले, बाकी मुझे किसी क्योंकि इसे सेल्फ कंपोज से नहीं हो सकता है, बाकी सब तो जैसे तैसे चल जाता है। मेरे को तो लगता है इसमें मैम को जैसे जब सेल्फ कंपोज आएगा, मैंने कहा मैम को बोलूंगी कि मैम हम मिलियन वॉल्यूम तो शेक्सपियर को बन नहीं सकते। एग्जैक्टली, तो उनके पॉइंट्स जो लर्न करके जाएंगे, जो सुनाएंगे, जितना इफेक्टिव होगा, हमारे लिखे पॉइंट्स उतने इफेक्टिव नहीं होंगे।
I think there is an issue. Computer hanged, I think. So, sir will come just with bear with us for 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Let's wait for 5 minutes. Okay.
What happened, sir? What happened?
Perfect, sir.
Kindly continue. You can perhaps, first of all, download the PPTs, open it, and then share it. Otherwise, we can continue to talk. Yeah.
No issue. Without PPT only I will do it.
Okay, please.
Not a problem. So there is a first question. What amounts to sexual harassment? As per International Convention CEDAW, the term sexual harassment is an act or a gesture, whether directly or by implication, aims at or has tendency to outrage the modesty of working women, constitute sexual harassment. Even an attempt to molestation would be sufficient to constitute sexual harassment. Then the next question will be, who is a harasser? Who may be harassed? So there is in common parlance, there is an opinion that in workplaces, there will be male bosses will always commit the act of sexual harassment of their subordinates.
चलो जी डार्लिंग,
Sir, just interrupting you. If you wish, we can run the PPT from our side. You can narrate if you wish.
Fine, sir. No problem. No problem.
Shall I share the PPT?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No problem.
Sure. You can continue.
Next slide. Next slide. Next. Next slide, sir. Yes. So there is a second important area where we have to concentrate more is who is a harasser and who may be harassed in the workplaces relating to sexual harassment. It is a generalized opinion that in workplaces, sexual harassment may happen between male bosses and women subordinates. But this is not true. Sexual harassment can occur between co-employees, peer-to-peer harassment, that is between male bosses and women bosses, subordinate harassment of a supervisor. Men can be sexually harassed by women, that possibility is also there. Same-sex harassment, like male harasses sexually and another male. Women also may involve sexual harassment of another woman. That possibility is also there. Third party harassment also may be there. The offenders, if you take the list of offenders, they may be the supervisors, the co-workers, non-employees such as customers, vendors and suppliers. All these people have the possibility for committing this particular act or gesture. So next slide. The next subtopic what I have framed is classification of sexual harassment. We have a generalized opinion always that sexual harassment is an act, physical act or a gesture which tends to outrage the modesty of female employee. But if you look at the US law relating to sexual harassment, it has classified the offense of sexual harassment into two types. One will be quid pro quo, another will be hostile work environment. The first classification of sexual harassment at workplace may be quid pro quo, that is for something for something. The meaning will be something for something. That means an employee, a female employee, may get a benefit or may lose a benefit for instigating her for sexual favors. That is the true meaning of quid pro quo. That is something for something. If she favors the employers or male bosses or supervisors, she will get promotion, she will get increment, all these possibilities. This is the type of sexual harassment. And another type of sexual harassment will be hostile work environment. Change the next slide, sir. Hostile work environment. This type of sexual harassment may happen very oftenly. Here, the male bosses, supervisors, and the people who are in the dominating position may pass a comment, vulgar comments, sexually explicit talks, repeated sexual comments, touching and other conduct of sexual nature which creates a hostile work environment for a female employee in that particular employment. She will hesitate to work, definitely, if this kind of sexual harassment is happening in her workplace. Next slide. The history of Vishaka case I have already discussed. Next slide. Yeah, this is very important. Supreme Court guidelines to prevent sexual harassment of women at workplace. Honorable Supreme Court of India in Vishaka case has been recognized that the act of sexual harassment violates human rights and gender equality and also affects right to life and livelihood of women community in general and working women in particular. The Honorable Supreme Court laid down mandatory guidelines for prevention, prohibition and redressal of sexual harassment which is committed against women at their workplaces. These guidelines imposed an obligation upon the employers of those workplaces to compulsorily follow. It is applicable to both organized as well as unorganized work sectors and to all women, whether working part-time or contract basis or voluntary or honorary capacity. In this regard, government departments, education institutions, commercial establishments, private companies, PUCs are hereby requested to comply with the implementation of these Vishaka guidelines. Next slide. So what are the guidelines framed by Honorable Supreme Court for prevention, prohibition and redressal of sexual harassment of women at their workplaces? The first important guideline, it shall be the duty of the employer other responsible persons in their workplaces or in their institutions to prevent or deter the commission of an act of sexual harassment and to provide the procedure for resolution, settlement or prosecution of the act of sexual harassment by taking all necessary steps. It is relating to employers' responsibility for prevention, prohibition and redressal of sexual harassment of women at their workplaces. Secondly, all the employers are persons in charge of their workplaces, whether in public or in private sector, to take appropriate steps to prevent sexual harassment without prejudice to the generality of this obligation. They should take following steps. There are many steps, many measures they have to adopt for the purpose of prevention, prohibition and redressal of sexual harassment of women at workplaces. Next slide. So this slide speaks about the employer's obligations. If you look at this slide, there are various obligations framed by Supreme Court of India. So what employers have to do? What is their obligation under Vishaka guidelines? And also under Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act of 2013. The first important obligation, express prohibition of sexual harassment as defined in the Act at the workplace should be notified, published and circulated in appropriate ways. This is most important because every woman employee or female employee who works in her employment shall come to know that there is a protection. There is a mechanism. There is a redressal in this particular employment in case if such harassment happens. Then she will be happy and she will also be brave enough to work in that particular workplace. And secondly, the rules and regulations of government and public sector bodies relating to conduct and discipline should include rules and regulations prohibiting sexual harassment and provide for appropriate penalties in such rules against the offender. The second obligation is also most important. And whenever the employment have the rules relating to conduct and discipline, those rules should be incorporated with the rules of Vishaka guidelines with the proper penalty and also appropriate penalty in such rules have to be incorporated against the offender. Thirdly, as regards to private employers, steps should be taken to include the aforesaid prohibitions in the standing orders under the Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act 1946. This is very, very important. Nowadays, all LPO, BPO companies, software companies, in their standing orders, they have already included the Vishaka guidelines in their workplace agreements, etc. Further, appropriate work conditions should be provided in respect of work, leisure, health and hygienic to further ensure that there is no hostile work environment towards women at workplaces and no women employee should have reasonable grounds to believe that she is in a disadvantaged position in connected to her employment. She should be encouraged. How to do that? How to build that? It's only the employers have to satisfy or to comply the obligations imposed by Vishaka guidelines and also the obligations framed under Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act 2013. Only then women will not have that apprehension that she is in a disadvantaged position when compared to male employees or co-workers, etc. Next slide. Further, the guidelines speaks about such harassment or such conduct amounts to specific offence under Indian Penal Code or under any other law. The employer shall initiate appropriate action in accordance with the law by making a complaint with the appropriate authority. See, if the act of sexual harassment is nothing but an act or gesture which tends to outrage the modesty of women, working women, and further the employer should make all arrangements for filing an FIR with the appropriate authority and facilitate the victim to go and file the FIR, and a legal solution should be provided by the employer. He should not keep quiet and should not neglect when sexual harassment have been taken place in such employments. And in particular, it should ensure the victims or witnesses are not victimized or discriminated against while dealing with complaints of sexual harassment. This is also very important. Sometimes women employee who is a victim of sexual harassment and a few witnesses relating to the act of sexual harassment happen in a particular employment, generally they'll be afraid of going and approaching the appropriate authority for filing the complaint and giving the witness or giving the evidence to the court of law. They will hesitate. So under such circumstance, it is the duty of the employer to make all arrangements for their safeguard and also for protection, for making their presentation or their address to the appropriate authority peacefully. That is the most important thing. Otherwise, people who are in the dominant position will threaten them, even life threatening also they will do. They don't allow the witnesses to give the evidence in the court of law. All these happens in the country. And further, where such conduct amounts to misconduct in employment as defined by relevant service rules, appropriate disciplinary action should be initiated by the employer in accordance with those rules. This is also an important obligation of the employer. A disciplinary action can be taken against the co-worker or co-employee or any contractor or any other person who has committed the act of sexual harassment against a woman or a female employee. That civil action, that is disciplinary action, also can be taken against the offender. Further, whether or not such conduct constitutes an offence under law or breach of service rules, An appropriate compliant mechanism should be created in the employer's organization. This is most important guideline framed by Honorable Supreme Court of India and has been incorporated into 2013 Act also. Every employer or in every employment, there shall be a compliant mechanism should be constituted to facilitate the victim, female employee who is a victim of sexual harassment, to approach the compliant mechanism for filing a complaint without any disturbance. This is very, very important guideline framed by Supreme Court of India, and also an obligation of the employer to do so without fail. Such complaint mechanism should ensure time-bound treatment of complaints. It is not just receiving the complaints and throwing into dustbin. Yes, they should do timely inquiry. They should do timely redressal of the issues which have been narrated in the complaint. That is also most important. Yes. Next slide. The complaint mechanism referred to should be adequate to provide, wherever it is necessary, a complaint committee, a special counselor, or other support service, including the maintenance of confidentiality. Obviously, the complaint mechanism may include a complaint committee, a special counselor, or other support service. They can take outside also, outsource also they can do it for the purpose of maintaining the confidentiality of the complaint registered by the victim, the female employee who has undergone the sexual harassment. The complaint committee should be headed by a woman, and not less than half of its members should be women. Further, to prevent the possibility of any undue pressure or influence from senior levels, such complaints committee should involve a third party, either an NGO or other body which is familiar with the issue of sexual harassment. This is also most important guideline framed by Honorable Supreme Court of India. The complaint mechanism should be constituted. The complaint committee should be constituted. A special counselor can be appointed. He may be a part of the complaint mechanism. And if it is required, the complaint committee may include a third party or an NGO for the purpose of handling the issue of sexual harassment which have been committed in the workplaces. The complaint committee must take an annual report to the government department concerned of the complaints and action taken by them. It is the duty of the complaint committee of the every organization or employment, or the duty of the employer to submit the annual report to the government department concerned relating to the complaints received by them and action taken by them. So it is also one important guideline framed by Honorable Supreme Court. Then the employers and persons in charge will also report on the compliance with the aforesaid guidelines, including on the reports of the complaints committee to the government department. That's all information relating to the complaints committee, the complaints received, inquiry has conducted, and the solution given to the victim. All has to be communicated to the department concerned. Further, employees should be allowed to raise issues of sexual harassment at workers' meetings and in other appropriate forum, and it should be affirmatively discussed in the employer-employee meetings. This is also another important guideline framed by Honorable Supreme Court. The employer should make an arrangement in the employer-employee meetings. This issue can be raised. Yes, it will be allowed to raise by the victim female employee who have undergone the act of sexual harassment by her co-worker or male bosses or any other person who committed the act of sexual harassment in her workplace. He should be provided an opportunity, and he should be provided an opportunity to hear her complaint or her version in the meeting. Next slide. Awareness of the rights of female employees in this regard should be created, in particular by prominently notifying the guidelines and appropriate legislation when enacted on the subject. It's also already the legislation has been enacted. Now it is the duty of the employer to create awareness among the female employee in this regard should be created. And where sexual harassment as a result of an act or omission by any third party or outsider, the employer or person in charge will take all necessary steps and reasonably to assist the affected person in terms of support and preventive action. In case the offender is an outsider, how an employee is going to deal with this particular case? For example, vendor, a service provider, a contractor. So under such circumstances, it is the duty of the employer to find out the outsider who has committed the act of sexual harassment in the employment place and shall take all necessary steps, and also to assist the affected person in terms of support and the preventive action. He has to provide proper solution for the issues arose in that particular employment. And further, the central and state governments are requested to consider adopting suitable measures, including legislation that has been already passed by Parliament of India in the year 2013. That's after a long time, that is nearly 15 years after Parliament of India has passed the legislation. It's a appreciable contribution made by the legislature. That particular guideline has been fulfilled by government side. Then it was directed by the court that the guidelines and norms would be strictly observed in all workplaces for the preservation and enforcement of the right to gender equality of the working women, and these directions would be binding and enforceable in law until suitable legislation is enacted. Obviously, these particular guidelines were in force. This is a judicial precedent. A historical guidelines of Vishaka guidelines have been, which was in force for nearly 15 years. The Supreme Court guidelines ruled our country in the workplaces without having the proper law in that particular area. Next slide. So after Vishaka's case, the post-Vishaka period, what was the Supreme Court rulings that we have to see? There was a case called as Apparel Export Company versus AK Chopra. The Apex Court have called upon to decide a sexual misconduct of a superior officer against a subordinate female employee. In the words of Justice Anand, the Honorable Chief Justice, there is no gainsaying that each intent of sexual harassment at the place of work result in violation of fundamental right of gender equality and right to life and liberty, the two main fundamental rights guaranteed by the Constitution of India. In our opinion, the contents of fundamental rights guaranteed in the Constitution are the sufficient amplitude to encompass all facets of gender equality, including prevention of sexual harassment and abuse, and the courts are under the constitutional obligation to protect and preserve the fundamental rights guaranteed under Article 14 and Article 21 of the Constitution. It's also very important. Supreme Court reaffirmed the guidelines which have been framed in Vishaka case, reaffirmed the same situation, and it is the duty of the court also to ensure, because Supreme Court of India is the safeguardian of fundamental rights, because that is the reason why they have framed the guidelines for ensuring gender equality and also the right to life of a working woman with dignity. Right to decent work is also one important right which have been included in right to life and personal liberty with the human dignity. That has been guaranteed by the Supreme Court of India, ensured by Supreme Court of India, guaranteed by Constitution of India. Next slide. It's a continuance only, same thing, just a conclusion. So what we have to conclude now? See, relating to the act of sexual harassment at the workplaces, even after so many years of independence, even after Vishaka guidelines, 15, 16 years, almost nearly 20 years got over, Vishaka guidelines have come into force. What are the changes which have been introduced? Whether people have changed their mentality, their attitude towards ensuring the dignity of women in their workplaces, or they are really respecting the female employee in their workplaces? Gender equality is ensured in all the workplaces? It's a great question mark. Many incidents, I'm telling you, which is not coming into public, which is not coming into complaint mechanism, which is not coming into court of law, which is not coming into appropriate authority, because even female employee also, the victim who have undergone the act of sexual harassment, because of the hesitation, because of the family identity, because of various other reasons, she hesitated to go to file a complaint against the offender who have committed the offense of sexual harassment. Even though there was an awareness created in the organized sector, still we need to create an awareness among the women working in the unorganized sector, particularly informal side sector, so that we can ensure gender equality and gender justice, and also we can guarantee the right to life, and right to life includes right to live with human dignity can be ensured. Otherwise, it is just we have guidelines, we have enactment. Unless the enactment is strictly implemented in all the workplaces, it is not possible to stop this particular activity. That is what is happening in our country. And it's concluded from the study that the act of sexual harassment is present in all the sectors of employment, whether organized or unorganized, in the absence of domestic law for the prevention of sexual harassment at the workplaces. Vishaka guidelines and norms framed by Honorable Supreme Court considered as a deemed law, and the same was recognized by the society as an instrument of social change from the year 1997 to 2013. And this Vishaka law was in force for more than 15 years. Supreme Court guidelines ruled our country nearly for 15 years. These Vishaka guidelines were in force for 15 years without having the law enacted by the parliament. It shows that, yes, court also can do law, but it is not equalized with the law enacted by the parliament, but it's not the duty of the court of law to do the law wherever the lacuna or the gray area in the legal system. But still, our Honorable Supreme Court has made immense contribution to abolish and to prevent, prohibit and redressal of sexual harassment of women at their workplaces, for ensuring gender equality and gender justice, and also right to live with human dignity of women, working women in their workplaces. Next slide. Yes, we have already discussed. Next. So how do we prevent this social evil? What are the suggestions we can, what are the changes we can do, except that Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act, Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act of 2013, we can do strict implementation for abolishing this particular social evil, no doubt at all. And also, including this act, the penal law of the country, Indian Penal Code, the provisions relating to sexual assault and sexual harassment should be strengthened, should be amended appropriately to impose higher penalty and more years of imprisonment for the offenders who have committed the act of sexual harassment, number one. Number second, if you see the scope of Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act, which is limited and it is applicable only to those employments employing 10 or more people. In this regard, we can do changes in the Employer Standing Orders Act of 1946. It can be suitably modified, amended to extend this scope to cover those industrial employments employing 20 or more persons, so that we can do something, we can achieve something for ensuring gender equality and gender justice of working women in their workplaces. The new act also may be suitably amended to extend its scope to cover those unorganized employments employ more than 10 persons. This is also most important thing. Enactment is very good enactment, no doubt at all. when you see the application of the act, extension of the act, it is not applicable to the employments where more than 10 workers are working. So new act may be suitably amended to extend its scope to cover those unorganized employments employ more than 10 people. Next. The women or girls in our society are continuously sexually harassed in both public as well as their workplaces. It indicates that it is not safe for women or girls to go out of their homes. Obviously, the parents, relatives, husbands of their family are feeling that there is no safety for the women. The recent Delhi gang rape, you must be knowing that the best evidence that women or girls are not safe in both public and their workplaces. Must be knowing Nirbhaya's case, what happened in Nirbhaya's case, gang rape. Due to that incident, the penal code, Indian penal code have been modified. Earlier there were only 7 years of imprisonment. Now it is life imprisonment. In case the offender committed the sexual harassment or the rape for the second time, he will be hanged, death penalty will be imposed. That is what the change which has been brought under this particular Delhi incident. You can see sometimes even school-going children also victimized by the harassers. In this connection, the POCSO Act is already there. The author like to suggest that such harassers must be mercilessly punished under the strict provisions of the law. POCSO Act is there, that will take care of that. And it's also suggested that government, NGO must be engaged in creating awareness among working women by involving in the changing the attitude of men against women in the society. That is what we are doing it now. Many people are participating in the webinar. Definitely they will spread the message to other members in the society. Like that way, we have to conduct many programs for initiating the awareness among the people so that this particular social evil slowly, step by step, it can be abolished. Otherwise, it is very difficult. Finally, I would like to appreciate the role of Honorable Supreme Court by its Vishaka guidelines that the Act is a deemed law in the absence of statutory law for the period of more than 15 years to prevent sexual harassment of women at their workplaces. So with this concluding remarks and the steps to be taken for preventing the social evil, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the organizers of all the joint organizers for providing me an opportunity to share some of my thoughts and also the knowledge which is accumulated by me in the area of sexual harassment of women at the workplaces, a judicial contribution as well as a legislative contribution in the present era, that's an Indian context. Thank you so much. And now I would like to receive the questions from the participants. Any questions are there, you can please send it to me, I can answer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. You explained a lot about the sexual harassment. From your words, we find out that sexual harassment is illegal. The legal and social understanding of sexual harassment, however, varies by culture. So, employer is a form of illegal employment discrimination. I think we have heard about a lot from this things, sir, your speech. We can go for Q&A.
Definitely, the work culture should be modified now. The work culture should be created. A very different work culture should be created in all organizations to respect both the genders, male and female. Even female also should not involve in any kind of act against male employees. That is also happening nowadays. It's growing now in other countries. It's not more in our country. That is also there. So,
there is one question which is actually, there is one question, sir, I'm actually rushing you. We have 5 minutes beyond, but I think we can take another 2 minutes. There is one question Anita has asked. The question is, good evening, sir. In the light of Justice Ranjan Gogoi's sexual harassment case, how do you see women sensitivity empowerment, where the guidelines of Supreme Court of India, Vishaka guidelines, where the highest office of the land failed to test or provide justice based on that? Department of Sociology from Dhaka.
Okay, it's a sociological point of view. that how we can take the judgment. The recently the judgment have been passed. I think it has been stayed by Honorable Supreme Court. The particular judgment have been stayed by Supreme Court of India, Honorable Supreme Court. It's relating to sexual assault.
Yeah, that's right. I think we have run totally, completely out of time, and I would now request, Dr. Mohansundaram, thank you for that wonderful moderation. In fact, I have my brother on the board of Carving Talent, Professor Somitro, who has
Thank you,
already
sir.
spoken a couple of times, and I would now request him. Yeah, thank you. Formally to actually take over and say a word of thanks. But before that, Dr. Mailsami's PPT contains lots of legal information. If any HR person wants it, with the permission of Dr. Mailsami, it can be shared. But otherwise, Mr. Stanley's session, that PPT also is available. We can send you the PDF in case we want. Over to Soumitra, sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. One more question, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good evening to everyone. Wonderful 2 hours we have spent. I wish to thank Stanley. I wish to thank Dr. Mahasundaram from Vivekananda Institute of Information and Management Studies, and finally Dr. Maliaswamy from Oxford College of Law. I think it's very important. We have our opinions, we have our, the social views, legal views, and etc. But it's important for everyone, for all the genders, to understand these particular guidelines that we normally call the POSH, that are, prevention of sexual harassment. The awareness is very important. What the law states, it itself is a preventive mechanism for either of the genders. So the government is taking their steps. It is mandatory for organizations to conduct these trainings and etc. But I think it should be gone into the institute levels also, to every individual understands it, because that is the one thing we think, that education is something that actually can change the mindset. Whenever we talk about gender sensitivity, you see, even in the guidelines, there is something written as the working women. So the day will stop referring the women going to office as working women. I think the day will achieve the equality that we are wishing to achieve. When a women going to the office is a working women, then what the women who's raising the society? Still we celebrate the women's achievement as the first woman has achieved something. So the problem of the society is very deep, and it's a kind of genetic, because it's a problems of centuries. Some liberals like us, we may think that actually we want women to be equal, a liberalized view, but deep in our heart, I think still we have that discrimination. So that is the problem, that education from the grassroots level, from the home, if we really address the issue of this sensitivity, how we look at the women folk at the office, forget about this sexual perspective, otherwise also. Right? If a woman leaves early, takes a leave, wants to, there are certain issues you always thinks that, the maybe management is biased towards the women and etc. But we never think about a perspective that particular individual is working in the office. She is actually working 24/7. Because when the office ends, her next office starts. So this particular thing, mindset needs to be changed, and if that doesn't change, we can keep talking about equalities in the 21st century. Standing here, if we'll still have to have seminars to make people understand that we are equal, that means we are not. We are far from what we wanted to achieve, and that's a global phenomenon. Like highly developed countries like US, we know in North America in the 80s, the issues from where everything is evolved. So that problem, that mindset, I think education is a very, very important aspect, and that should be at home only and from mothers only. So it will take time, but I think technology will again, in terms of that other capability inequalities you talk about, technology has taken over. So technology is something so wonderful thing. Once technology comes into the picture, those perspective will obviously eliminate, and definitely these guidelines are very important. The infrastructure we need, and I doctor has explained it so thoroughly. Actually, we thought we should have more time to to understand it in a much better way. This posh the sexual harassment laws by the Supreme Court actually. But I want to conclude with one thing for everyone. There is we have two very strong laws for women empowerment. One we call the dowry case, and another one this particular sexual harassment case. And there is an observation of the Supreme Court. These two laws are the most misused laws also. So that is one aspect needs to be addressed equally with the implementation of this law. So I think a lot of thinking should come from us. As we said, still we keep thinking that women are equal, they will never be equal. So we'll have to stop thinking, and we need to work hand in hand, then things can move around. As I said, it's a mindset, it's a social limits that need to move. Once that happens, I think we'll be able to achieve. It will take time, but I think it will happen. And I used to thank all the participants for your patience and your discipline, the way you remain throughout the seminar. And thank you, all speakers. Devi Darshan sir, up to you.
So we have come to the end of this session. All the organization who are joined hands with us and making this grand success. Thank you so much, and hopefully we will meet again in the future. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.